want to cause my brother to be lost. So I can't do it.
Yes. That's kind of hard to think about because it doesn't bother you.
So let every one of us, verse 2, 15 and 2, please his neighbor for his good.
To edification.
To build them up.
Yeah.
I got to please you.
Yes.
To build you up so that you can get stronger.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get stronger eating something that's condemning you.
Yeah. Okay.
See?
For even Christ pleased not himself.
For even Christ didn't please. We preach it, say, and Jesus hung there on the cross. Say he could have come down, but he didn't. Because he died to save us. And he could have called 10,000 angels.
Yeah.
He could have come off the cross. And I'm so glad that he didn't have to do it, but he did. Now I'm telling you, you got to do it.
You got to help your brother and your sister.
Yeah.
That's what you're getting to tonight. You got to help your brother and sister and don't do something that will cause them to be lost. And the scripture about food here, well, it could be anything, right? It could be anything.
And he
this
says,
is my food here.
Verse 21.
It is good news to eat flesh, nor to drink wine, nor anything whereby your brother stumbles, or is offended, or is made weak.
Because in Corinth, he talks about women and the hair, and dressing, men coming in with something on their heads. He said, take it off. And women with nothing on their heads, they put something on. That means that he says to the women, he was dealing with the fact that in Corinth, and he was saying this to the Corinthian church, and sometimes some of the things in the Corinthian church, just like in the Roman church, people take it explicitly to mean that for everybody.
Okay.
But he was saying it that this is how I want you to behave, so that if you're in a situation where culture will come in, then you got to have the Spirit to lead and guide you. So in the Corinthian church, they were dealing with the prostitute, women who were serving under goddess Diana. They were in there with their heads shaved, which identified them as prostitutes. Then they would get drunk they were drugged, and so they were in there with the incense and the smoke, and then they were babbling incoherently, and the priest of the temple, when a person would pay for their interpretation, then that priest would interpret the babbling that woman gave as a interpretation of her tongue. And those people come out of that, they're saying God spoke to us, and they would look at it like that. Now, Paul comes into Corinth, these folk get saved.
They get saved.
Now, here comes this woman that last week, Joe was in there.
Yes.
And she was babbling under the influence of the temple.
Yes.
And when the priest was paid or got his offering, he would get an interpretation. So Paul says in the Corinthian church, 1 Corinthians 15, and he says that now let your women, these women, keep silent in the church.
Distinction.
I forbid them to speak in the church, speak in tongues. Cause how you gonna make a difference? Or somebody come in and think,
yes, that you're still at the Temple of Diana and you're not saved. But Paul is saying now, because I see you in another setting, don't do the old things that you used to do, because people can't make a distinction between the two. So that's why he said keep silent, not for to be everybody, but just for those ladies, because they still came out, and people still until their life has changed, or people see the difference, they're gonna still associate them with the old person.
Because a few chapters earlier,
Uh-huh.
now in 15th chapter, he told them to be quiet.
Yes.
But a few chapters earlier, he says if they're going to pray,
Mm-hmm.
make sure you got hair. Make
Yeah.
sure your hair's on your head.
Uh-huh.
So he wasn't telling them that
Not
they
to.
could pray.
Yeah.
He said these can't pray.
These
'Cause
can't
in
pray.
the same book,
Yes.
he says, women, if you're going to pray, make sure you're not bald headed.
Uh-huh.
You got to have hair on your head
Uh-huh.
because it's got to be a difference.
Yes.
You can't told those women, he says, now I'm saying this to Corinthian church.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I don't have this custom in other churches.
Yes.
He said, I'm just telling y'all.
Because this is what their culture was.
This is what they had to come out of.
Uh-huh.
So he says to them, if you're going to pray, make sure your head is covered or wait till your hair grow back
Mm-hmm.
before you pray.
So they won't be associated with the old lifestyle.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So you got to look out for your brother.
Yes.
They got to be on one accord. So he's saying that there's several customs in the Corinth church, and I don't want to go there yet. I may want to preach, but in the Corinth church, when they came together to do communion, they came together and had dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So the people who had the money and the fame, they would sit there, they would eat and drink, and then when it came time for the poor folk, because the richer folk ate first, and then the poorer folk or the lesser folk, because it was a system, they had what's left, and some of them didn't get anything. So Paul said, you don't come here to
do
eat dinner,
Yes.
not the communion
Not the
table.
communion table. Yeah.
And then in the communion table, you don't have folk who are not saved, and you can't mix the table of communion with the table of the devil.
Mm-hmm.
So he was making distinctions.
Yeah.
And so in this book, he's saying that that we're supposed to please each other. Which is what he was saying there, is that what you should rather do when you're coming together, if you're going to commune, then everybody's communing. If you're going to, since in Corinth, at the church at Corinth, they had all the gifts. All the gifts are operating in that church. But even though all those gifts are operating, he says to them, just because you're walking and you got gifts, you gotta love one another. So he said to them, though I speak with the tongue of men, of angels, and have all gifts, and, he said, but if I'm not showing love, it profits me nothing. So he expounds upon it here. At the same time, to go further in the Roman church, is that our job is to make sure, and that's we that are strong ought to bear
the infirmities of the weak,
and not to please ourselves. So what we should rather do, where is it? 14 and 13. Let us therefore not judge one another anymore. Don't judge anybody anymore.
But judge this rather.
But here's what you'd rather do.
That no man put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in his brother's way.
So the judgment comes from, now I shouldn't be judging you about what you eat and don't eat.
Yes.
But now I need to judge about whether I'm putting a stumbling block or an occasion to fall
in my brother's
in
way.
your way. So now the judgment reverses. So now my judgment is not on looking at you. And I'm not looking at her no more about what she's doing. But now, to walk in love and in unity, I'm supposed to look at myself and make sure I'm not doing anything that would cause her to stumble.
Wow. I tell you, Paul was had some great rich interpretation that God gave to him, you know, and these particular verses here about how that we're to please each other. Please not ourselves, but how to please others.
Trying to please others.
So we won't be thinking about ourselves, we think about others first.
Because Christ died for us. Now we gotta love each other like that. For verse 15 and 3, for even Christ pleased not himself, but as it is written, the reproaches of them that reproach thee fell on me. Now look, let's replace that word with insults. Another interpretation says insults. So the insults of them that insulted you fell on me. So that person insulted you, but I'm insulted.
Yes.
So Christ said, I'm taking the insults myself.
Wow. And in that way, Pastor Cole, we will be our brother's keeper, because we won't look at what all about ourselves, but we'll look at how our sister and brother is treated and how they feel about what we do to them or what somebody else do to them. Because we have to bear each other's burden. Them that are strong bear the infirmities of the weak.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about when I was working at Procter & Gamble, and this guy came in, and we was in the lunchroom eating, and he asked me to have a biscuit. And of course, I ate his biscuit, and he waited till I finished eating the biscuit, and he said, that biscuit was cooked with beer. You know, and I said, if I had known it, I wouldn't have ate it. But because I didn't know it, I ate it. So God didn't hold that.
Right.
See, they were trying to do that to me, right? But chapter 8 in 1 Corinthians.
Yes, sir. Chapter 8, yes, sir.
Look at okay, verse, I guess we can start at verse 8.
Verse 8, chapter 8, verse 8. Okay. Yes, sir. So then, they that are in the flesh cannot please.
No, 1 Corinthians.
Oh, 1 Corinthians. Excuse me, sir. 1 Corinthians. I went back to Romans. All right. 1 Corinthians 8 and verse 8. Yes, sir. 8 and 8. But meat condemneth us not. Commendeth us not to God. For neither if we eat are we better, neither if we eat not are we the worse.
Okay.
But take heed lest by any means this liberty of yours become a stumbling block to them that are weak.
So he was saying, you're no better or no worse by eating that meat that was
offered to idols.
Or that biscuit I ate with beer in it.
Yeah.
Okay. But
take heed lest by any means this liberty of yours become a stumbling block to them that are weak.
But take heed. So if I had said to him after he exposed the fact, because he wanted to know if it was good, and I said, yeah, it was good. He said, well, I cooked it with beer. Right?
Yeah.
So if I said, give me another one. See, even though I was at liberty, it didn't matter. But because, okay, look at it.
Okay. For if any man see thee which has knowledge.
See, I got knowledge.
Sit at meat in the idol's temple.
And I'm sitting at meat in the idol's temple.
Shall not the conscience of him which is weak be embroidered to eat those things which are offered to idols?
So if I'm sitting there and I'm eating biscuit with beer.
Mm-hmm.
After he told me that beer was in the biscuit,
Mm-hmm.
and I keep on eating it, then I'm setting somebody up to say, well, if Pastor Corden is doing it,
Yeah.
I can do it too.
Mm-hmm.
So then all of a sudden, they just leave the biscuit
And
and go for the beer.
and go for the beer.
Because he says, what's the difference with, you know, that's what it's saying,
Mhm.
that I'm not protecting my brother because they see me doing it
Yes.
and they don't have the faith to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden, read on that.
And through thy knowledge shall the weak brother perish, my God, for whom Christ died.
And through my knowledge, because I know that if I pray for something, it's all right. I got the knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
but my brother don't. So I got to protect my brother. See, there's a lot of things that you're saved enough to do.
Mm-hmm.
When God has saved you
Yes.
and you're in liberty and you stand fast in the liberty where Christ has made you free,
Mm-hmm.
and don't be entangled in the yoke of bondage. But then at the same time,
Same time.
he's telling us to protect one another. That if you see a brother who's weaker than you are, don't use your liberty and your faith
Mm-hmm.
to destroy him.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some people that will do things that we believe are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And if they big enough, if they got enough status in the church,
Uh-huh.
we're going to follow right along with them. But it's going to bother our conscience
Yes.
because inside we believe that it's wrong. God saved me from that.
Yeah.
God delivered me from that. So I can't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so I'm not going to do it.
That's right.
I'm not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Look at verse 13.
Glory to God. Wherefore, if meat make my brother to be offended,
So if eating meat will cause my brother to stumble or to fall,
I will eat no flesh while the world standeth,
I'm going to
Lest-
stop eating meat while the world stands,
lest I make my brother to offend.
lest I make my brother to offend.
Uh-huh.
And I know y'all are saying, well, that don't make no sense. Well, it ain't got to make sense. It's just what, I'm just telling you what the Bible say, you know.
Yeah.
Because when we get too far into pleasing ourselves,
Yes.
we lose sight of pleasing others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there are those of you who go out of your way to please others by making sure you don't offend,
Mm-hmm.
and then people rail you and talk about you and try to make you feel bad because God is telling you to protect your brother,
Yes.
to protect your sister.
Mm-hmm.
And but then when you see somebody else gossiping,
Uh-huh.
when you see somebody else lying, when you see somebody else doing things, and it pushes some people to join in,
Yes.
and you cause your brother to lose out, because if you do something, you can go back, get it right.
Yes.
But that person that saw you doing it
Uh-huh.
may not get right because they weren't there to see you get right.
Yes.
See, that you cussed me out
Mm-hmm.
in front of everybody,
In front of everybody.
or in front of a few, or whoever.
Uh-huh.
And then later on, you came back, got it right with me.
Mm-hmm.
But those people that saw you do that
Yes. May not be there then.
wasn't there to see
Uh-huh.
that.
Yes.
And so, by that action, you may have caused someone to stumble who were looking up to you
Yes.
or who were respecting you.
Yes.
So we got to protect each other, even though some things is right to say it
Mm-hmm.
or is right not to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't mean that you got to do it.
Yes.
Paul says all things are lawful, but he talks about, I don't have to do it just because I can. It's the bottom line. He says, I don't have to do this just because I can.
Yes.
But I'm living a life of servitude. I'm living a life to protect my brother and sister, so that when we come together to worship, we can all praise God on the same level. We can all worship God without there being any of these kinds of isms and schisms that would cause us not to be one. Because when I protect you, I bring you closer to me.
Yes.
And it brings me closer to you. Maybe over time, your faith will grow.
Yes.
And you'll get to where I am. But I'm gonna protect you till you get there.
Yes, that's right.
I'm not gonna make it a big thing that you gotta hurry up and get saved so you can, I'm not there to bully you, but I'm here to love you.
Yes.
You know how it used to happen, and I gotta close this, that when a person would come to church and we'd jump on them to get saved, we would sanctify them before they went home that night. If they had on stuff they didn't need to have on, we'd pull it off. If they needed something on, we'd put it on. We button up men's shirts and
Hold on, well, ladies, put skirts, put sheets around ladies.
I mean, we would do everything we can to fix them up. Right? And then when they come back, we, post them on. But he's saying, if we love them and care for them, they will quickly mature.
Yes.
And come to where they ought to be.
Yes.
They'll come in and see your life full of love.
Yes. Thank you, Jesus.
And then they say, I want to be like that.
Yes. Love does that.
Love does that. And I want to be like Jesus. Why? Because the way he loves me.
Yes.
To
God be the glory.
And you want to be like your pastor because of the way he loves you. You want to be like your first lady because of the way she loves you.
Yes.
You want to be like your assistant pastor or your youth pastor or your choir director or your usher board president or whatever, and
title you have.
whatever title, I just named a few, but whatever title that you have, you want to love people so that they'll want to be like you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And we don't want to do anything that will cause them to stumble, to be offended and to stumble, or to hurt them. But we're to nurture them and build them up until they get to the strength that God wants them to have. And that strength comes from the example that we give. I mean, they got to know God for themselves, but until then they look at somebody to get to where they need to be. And we got to be those lights. We got to be like Jesus. We got to love like Jesus. We got to have compassion like Jesus. So we got to be like Jesus.
Right. And we're getting ready to stop this, but one of the things that I learned in study is that when Jesus left the apostles were esteemed as highly as Jesus. Those original apostles, they were esteemed, and the prophets, they were esteemed as high as Jesus because he left them as his representatives.
Yes.
And so those original men, when they spoke, and Paul, when he spoke, because he was an apostle, they carried the authority, they carried the respect that one would give. I mean, Jesus, they literally, and it wasn't a put on, it was what those that had been with Jesus
had a spirit,
and Jesus left his 12, they were esteemed with Jesus. And over the course of time, you know, that lessened, you know, the estimation, the esteeming got less and less, and even the authority got less, because as the men got weaker, so did their followers, and so did the way, and that's why over the centuries revivals have come, and there's been great men and great women who walk close to God, and they carry the respect,
They carry that respect.
and they carry the love, because they make sure
They make sure
that they protect
the gospel of one another.
they protect one another. They look out for people. They make sure that they are nurtured and grow into the faith.
Yes.
And James says to Jude, says to contend earnestly for the faith
that
was once delivered to the saints.
Yeah.
We got so much stuff going on today that's so far removed from this kind of faith. You know.
Yeah. Protecting faith.
Yes.
Loving faith.
Yes.
Forgiving faith. Compassionate faith.
Yeah.
Helping faith.
Yeah. That.
Yes.
If that's gonna bother you, then I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah. Even though you can do it and feel like, you know, the authority you have, you can do it. But if it brings somebody to an offense, why did she do that? Then you can't do that. You may have the authority or whatever the position, but you still got to consider those who are looking at you, so that you won't say the wrong thing or demand the wrong thing, because they are following after you, and they may not they're not as strong as you are in the process. So you got to be so careful what you say and what you do, because you don't want to offend anybody. Because somebody's looking at you. Somebody wants to be like you.
Yeah.
And you can't.
You can speak so harshly to people because something happens when people get a mic in their hand, or they stand up behind the podium. All of a sudden, they can be so impending and empowered to destroy. But there's a way to speak.
Yeah.
You speak in love, or speak from love. He says, cry loud, spare not.
Show those people their transgression.
And,
House of Jacob.
but there's a way
There's
to
a
say
way
it.
to say it.
There's a way to say it.
And love draws and love covers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is all about loving today.
Oh, yes.
This whole lesson today was all about loving our
Yeah.
brother and not causing them to stumble.
Yeah.
You know, and we look at when in Paul, he was talking to the people here in Rome, of what was their issue. You know, their issue was that when people saw them eating the meat that was offered to the idols, they couldn't distinguish between the idol and what was in the market, because they all saw it come from the same place. So another person standing by said, why are you eating that meat that was offered to idols? And they want to live for the Lord. But they saw you eating meat that was offered to idols.